So welcome everyone. Today, Professor Dr. Ali Aydın Selçuk from ODTÜ University is with us. Thank you, hocam, again.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. He's going to talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and its application and expectations, but I would like to briefly introduce him. Professor Ali Aydın Selçuk has been a faculty member at ODTÜ, Department of Computer Engineering since 2013. He received his BS and MS degrees in Industrial Engineering from Middle East Technical University and also Bilkent University in 1993 and 1995. He received his PhD degree in computer science from University of Maryland. In 2001, he worked at RSA Data Security, Novel Networks, and Purdue University Network System Lab during and after his PhD. He was a faculty member at Bilkent University between 2002 and 2013. He received the Distinguished Teaching Award from Bilkent University in 2008, and he has acted as a consultant on cryptography and information security for several government and private corporations in Turkey. Hocam.
Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction, hocam. Yeah, I was at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. It shouldn't be confused with Harrisburg. I just would like to add that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my talk today is about Bitcoin and blockchain. Many of us have heard about these terms in the recent years, but few of us know what they exactly are. So I'll try to keep things simple, and I hope everybody will be able to follow. So this is prepared for audiences from all kinds of backgrounds. So if you have a question, please feel free to interrupt and ask your question. This is the outline of my talk. First, I'll introduce the concept of blockchain on the example of Bitcoin, and then explain what the blockchain is, how Bitcoin works. And there are some key terms like public ledger and proof of work. I'll talk about these a little. And then I'll talk about the research problems. Since this is an academic community, I'll talk about the academic research problems in the area. And then I'll discuss the sensational news about blockchain. How much of it is truth, how much of it is hyped. And then my outlook on the future of these things. Yeah, an overview. Yeah, this is an overview of the Bitcoin system. One critical thing is this thing called public ledger. Ledger is in Turkish muhasebe defteri, where accountants keep records of all the transactions they do. So the blockchain concept is actually one big public ledger. Everybody is able to view it. So and its security comes from its transparency. Everybody is able to see and audit the contents of the public ledger. Hence, it cannot be tampered with. This is the basic idea. Then there's a question of how this public ledger is to be maintained. There's a P2P network, very much like BitTorrent, for instance. In BitTorrent, there's all kinds of media files and other kinds of files, large files being shared. Just like that, this public ledger is being shared over a P2P network. And there's this novel idea of proof of work, and I'll talk about this in detail, more detail. It's to obtain consensus, and consensus is critical because this public ledger, it is distributed over a P2P network, so it has to be consistent. And it's not a trivial problem how to maintain the consistency of the ledger file across the globe over an indefinite period of time. So proof of work is a novel idea to solve this consistency problem. So these are some of the key concepts in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin P2P network, as I said, it's very much like BitTorrent. There are nodes in this P2P network, and these nodes keep their own copy of the ledger. ledger is, as I said, it's an accounting book that keeps a record of all the transactions on Bitcoin. So all Bitcoin transactions made since the beginning of Bitcoin are archived on this ledger. I shouldn't say file because its ledger is divided into many files. Each file is about 1 megabyte big, and the ledger is divided into many files, but these nodes keep their local copies of this ledger. Hence this P2P network. You don't need to be a full node. If you maintain your own copy of the ledger, you are a full node. But to be able to use the Bitcoin network, you don't have to be a full node. It's up to you. You may choose to store your own copy of the ledger or not. You can just choose. You can choose to be a light node in that case, you don't necessarily keep your own ledger. The software consists of several modules. There's this wallet module. Wallet is for ordinary users. If you want to make a Bitcoin transaction, you have your own wallet and you have your digital signature key. You sign your transactions and you maintain your wallet. And there's this full blockchain, the blue node you see. If you choose to keep your own copy of the ledger, then you become a full node. Again, you don't have to. Then there's this networking module. It is kind of mandatory because if you want to be able to interact with the rest of the Bitcoin network, you need to run this network module. Of course, you can use Bitcoin over exchanges. I mean, you may not ordinary users may not have their own networking module either, but they do transactions over crypto exchanges, these intermediary institutions. And there's this module of mining. Mining is famous for its waste of valuable resources of the earth, like energy. Bitcoin is known for being a big enemy of the environment because of this mining thing. And you don't have to be a miner. And we'll come to what mining is and why it consumes so much energy. We'll come to that. But these are all separate modules of Bitcoin software. And you may choose just to be a light node and just do transactions and nothing else. A public ledger, I already briefly mentioned this. It's an accounting book that keeps a record of all the transactions made on the Bitcoin network since its beginning. So let's say I want to send a Bitcoin transaction to Cihangir, let's say. So there are a number of checks that must be executed on this transaction. First, the receiver, I prepare a transaction and I broadcast this to the Bitcoin network. The receiver of this packet should first verify my digital signature on it. Each user of the Bitcoin network has a signature key. There's a private key used for signing, and there's a public key that's available to everyone. And the public key is used by others to check the validity of these transactions. So they first need to check the digital signature on the transaction. And second, they must make sure that the sender has enough balance in his or her account. It's the second check. If it's a valid transaction, it is then sent to the mempool. Mempool, it's not immediately recorded on the ledger. There is an intermediate period. I mean, between the time of creation of this transaction and between the time of recording of the transaction in the ledger. In this intermediate term, the transaction is kept in the mempool. Let's say, that it's at a given point there can be thousands of transactions waiting in the mempool to be added to the ledger by some, let's say, volunteer or some miner. And what's a block? I mean, this is what gives the name of blockchain to this system. A block, as I said, ledger is a huge file. It's terabytes, let's say. It's a huge file, and it consists of smaller files. of 1 megabyte size. These 1 megabyte size files are known as blocks. And there you can think of them as pages of the ledger. Ledger is the whole accounting book, and a block is just one page of the accounting book. You can think of a block in terms of pages of a book. Yeah, a block is 1 megabyte. Yeah, one megabyte of transactions. That's what a block is. And there is a reason it's called a blockchain system, because these blocks and the pages of the book are maintained in a way of integrity. So they cannot be separated from or deleted from the rest of the ledger. There is some kind of integrity protection of the ledger. Hence, it's called the blockchain. And we'll come to that. Okay, this picture explains what blockchain is. You see each of these nodes, block 10, block 11, these are files of 1 megabyte size. The contents, there's a header part, as you see, and there's the payload part. The payload part consists of transactions. TX at the leaf nodes at the bottom, TX stands for transaction. So the file has all these transactions in it, and they store a hash of these transactions. Hash, as you know, a cryptographic hash function or hashing in algorithms, let's say. The hash provides the integrity of these things, and it's stored in the header. Header has a few other fields as well. You see, there's this hash of the previous block, and there's there's a chain. We can put it this way. Each block header contains the hash value of the previous block. So it provides that kind of integrity. I mean, the hash of a block file has the hashes of the previous blocks in it as a field value. So if somebody tampers with a previous block, the system will become inconsistent, and it's impossible to do control changes on previous blocks without making the system inconsistent. And there's this timestamp value. The timestamp value provides another sort of integrity. Yeah, if you use blockchain to maintain records of some system, it naturally provides the timing value for these transactions. Okay. Okay, any questions so far? Is it clear what block is and what blockchain is? Özden Hocam, what do you say?
I think it is clear, but I want to hear from the students maybe. Like, okay, no questions so far.
No questions, okay. Silence is from consent, as they say.
Yeah. Okay.
Bitcoin mining. Okay, now this critical concept of mining, I mentioned it very briefly, and I said, okay, what's mining? Sometimes there is this analogy. You hear about this analogy between Bitcoin mining and gold mining. There are only so many Bitcoins that can be created, and mining is about finding new Bitcoins. This is the analogy, roughly how the analogy goes. Like every analogy, it's not perfectly accurate. It gives some idea, and there's no such thing as a Bitcoin, first of all. Maybe we should make this thing clear first. What we call a Bitcoin is just some number in the accounting book, okay? I mean, when I first have heard about Bitcoin, before I learned the details of the system, I imagined something like maybe there is some secret number that is to be found, and people solve some mathematical puzzles to discover that secret number. And once that secret number is found, you have a Bitcoin, perhaps, because so it's like gold mining. It's absolutely incorrect. There is no such thing. What we call a Bitcoin is just a number on your balance sheet. If I have 10 Bitcoins, then I have 10 positive balance on my wallet. That's all. I mean, there is no such thing. There is no serial number of a Bitcoin or anything that is remotely like this. Not at all. A Bitcoin is just a simple number on your account balance, nothing more. Then what is mining? If there is no such thing as a Bitcoin, then what is mining? And why is it so hard? And why is it getting harder constantly? These are the issues that puzzle many people who hear about Bitcoin for the first time. Okay, mining and difficulty of adding new Bitcoins to the system comes from this need to maintain consensus. Because as I said, the ledger is maintained by about 10,000 or more different nodes across the internet. And if you think about this, there are natural delays. I mean, if there is no malicious attack, even if there is no malicious attack, just due to the natural delays of the internet, it's natural that we'll have over time, we'll have many different versions of the ledger file. I mean, people in Japan maybe will have a slightly different version of the ledger than the people in Turkey and people in the US, because of the natural delays, because there's so many transactions being created almost simultaneously. So it's just natural that different versions of the ledger will emerge. But this is something we would like to absolutely avoid. The purpose of this consensus algorithm is to maintain the absolute consistency of the ledger. So it will not diverge from place to place or from node to node. We would like to have a single valid version of the ledger, because the whole security of the system relies on the uniqueness of the ledger. If we have, let's say, tolerably close versions of the ledger, this ruins the whole underlying idea of the public ledger. For public ledger to be useful, it has to have a single version, absolutely. And this is maintained by this consensus. So how does consensus work? There is this critical term of proof of work. Proof of work. It is the reason why the Bitcoin is so environment unfriendly. It wastes as much energy as the Netherlands, I believe, more than Hungary. So some mid-sized countries, I mean, this wasteful way of maintaining a public ledger is the reason Bitcoin wastes so much energy. So how does it work? What is this proof of work? This cartoon, this caricature, I think explains it pretty well. The girl goes to his dad and asks for some new gifts, a dollhouse, and his father asks her to run 5 kilometers and to complete a 5-kilometer run before he can buy the gift for her. So what does running a 5-kilometer marathon have to do with a dollhouse? Absolutely nothing. There is no relation, there is no inherent relation between the question of the daughter and the answer given by the father. They're absolutely unrelated. So what's the father trying to do here? Just to slow her down, so he won't be able to do too many requests over a short period of time. We just want to slow down the system, so we will be able to keep it consistent. This is the idea. So when new Bitcoin transactions are created, before they can be added to the public ledger, we would like the person who is to add these transactions to the ledger solve a difficult problem just to slow things down, just that the ledger will not change too rapidly, too quick. Okay. So the purpose of solving difficult problems in Bitcoin is to maintain the consistency of the ledger and nothing else. It has nothing to do with solving a secret number that is difficult to obtain or any such thing. This is artificially created problem that can be solved only by trial and error. And once you do the trial and error solution, it will slow down the system. So new ledger pages cannot be added more frequently than one page in every 10 minutes. This is roughly the idea. Özden Hocam, question.
Yes, we have a question. Utku.
Yes. So we just waste energy to slow down.
Can you speak louder, please?
Yeah, it will be good.
Can you
We
hear
can't
me?
hear you well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
So we just waste energy to slow down the system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the purpose to waste energy. It's and the purpose is to force the person to make computation. And I'll come to that. I mean, I think it's not. This is just the analogy. I mean, I haven't explained how proof of work. If you want, you can keep your question for another 5 minutes, and then we can talk about it if you want.
Of course.
Okay. Well, then, so let's just move on and see how this works in case of Bitcoin. And Özden Hocam, I may not be able to check the chat box as I talk. Could you please, if you can, yeah, just let me know if there's anything I need to answer. That'd be great.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I said, as new transactions are being created, they are sent to the mempool, and they wait in the mempool for some benevolent miner to take it from there and to put it into his next block created. So, I mean, a transaction, if I send money to Cihangir, I send Bitcoin to Cihangir, it is not complete until someone validates it and adds it to the next block. It has to be added to the next block, and some miner has to do it. So we need miners to create these new pages, and we need puzzles to slow down the miners. And the difficulty of the puzzle is such that it cannot be solved significantly faster than one puzzle in every 10 minutes. So we adjust the difficulty of the puzzle so that it will take 10 minutes on average. So what is the puzzle and how do we adjust it? Okay, so since everybody is not from the cybersecurity program, I may perhaps need to explain what a cryptographic hash function is. A cryptographic hash function is a one-way function. It takes an arbitrary length input. X here can be a file. Like it can be a simple number, a 32-bit number, or it can be some file of megabytes. Doesn't matter. It's called a hash because just like algorithmic hash functions, it takes an arbitrary length input and produces a fixed length output. And the difference between a cryptographic hash function and a normal algorithmic hash function is these are strongly one-way. If you are given the value of y, let's say you are given the value of y, there is no way to find x other than trial and error. You can, somebody can tell you x is a 64-bit number and this is the hash value of x. Then your only way to solve this problem is by trying all 64-bit values until you obtain y. So this is what the cryptographic hash function, and its main feature is being one way. And also another second feature is it's extremely fast. And Cihangir has some masterful implementations of such cryptographic functions on GPUs, for instance. That you can think of it, I mean, roughly speaking, on a modern CPU, some millions of trials can be done every second, and on a modern GPU, it is some billions of transactions every second. So these are the only two things you need to remember. It is one way and it's extremely fast, about billions of trials every second. These are the only two things you need to know about cryptographic hash functions. So then what's the puzzle? Okay, so you can make the puzzle, for instance, something like this. I mean, y can be, y here is the output value, and you can ask the person to find x that produces this y. But you need to put some bounds on x because, you know, it's not feasible to try every possible value. Only for a certain range you can try. Maybe another better choice would be, okay, in the context of Bitcoin, X will be your block. As you remember, a block is a 1 megabyte file. A hash of this, very roughly speaking, a hash of this file will be computed, and you would like to have the output of this hash to have some property, non-trivial property, which will take quite a few trials to find. Like what? I mean, what kind of property I'm talking about? Maybe you can want Y to have so many bits of zeros in the low order bits. Let's say the 64 low order bits of Y has to be zeros. Have to be zeros, yeah. So how many trials would this take on average? 2 to the 64, right? If you want last 64 bits of the hash value to be zeros, it would take on average 2 to the 64 trials. And X is the contents of the ledger. Okay, if you go back a few slides. Okay, let's look at this block 11. There's the payload, the transactions. So we are going to compute the hash of this, and we would like to have the output of the hash to have so many zeros in the low order bits. There is this nonce field I haven't talked about much in the header. Nonce, I hope you see this. Nonce is a random number tried once. So you prepare the contents of your block, the file, and nonce is just a random value. You keep computing the new values of the block by just changing the nonce value. I mean, you don't change the transactions. The transactions as you prepared at the beginning, and you change the nonce value, increment it, simply you just increment the nonce value until you obtain a hash value that has so many bits of zeros in the low order bits. This is the kind of the puzzle. This is the nature of puzzle. Yeah, maybe Utku, question now?
I couldn't hear you, but
Would you like you to ask your question now?
shall I ask it again?
We delayed your question until I explained what the puzzle was.
Of course. So do we waste energy just for consuming time?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a byproduct, you can say. I mean, nobody wants to nobody wants to waste energy. We just like to slow down the system so miners cannot add pages to the ledger arbitrarily. So we just like to slow them down. Yeah. And one more thing, one more detail I need to add. I said, you know, the difficulty of the puzzle is adjusted, so it cannot be solved faster than one puzzle in every 10 minutes on average. So how does this happen? People calculate the average time it took to solve the last so many puzzles over the couple of blocks. And if it becomes significantly faster than the desired rate, then we increase or perhaps decrease the difficulty of the puzzle. This is the idea. And when Satoshi Nakamoto, when he started this system, it was just 32 bits of zeros. And 32 is not a terribly big number. And 2 to the 32, you know, it's not too bad. But as Bitcoin gained value, and at that time it wasn't a cent. I mean, Bitcoin was much less than a cent. It was just toy money. Actually, I mean, it wasn't money as we understand it. It was just toy money, just the enthusiasts of crypto money. They played with it, just played with it. So it was 32-bit puzzle. But as Bitcoin grew in value, people started putting more resources into the system. I mean, they entered the system with more computers and GPUs and ASIC systems and all that. And later, people started uniting their resources. There are mining pools in China that instead of doing your mining yourself, because you have absolutely no chance if you try it on your own, you join some mining pool and they gave you a share if they win the next puzzle. Yeah. So the problem is, first, individual resources became unexpectedly large, like GPUs and ASIC systems and such. And then people started combining their resources because Bitcoin became so valuable. This wasn't something foreseen by Satoshi, I believe. Nobody wanted Bitcoin to waste so much energy. It's a novel idea. I mean, yeah, but the purpose was not to waste resources. The purpose was just to make the rate of progress to keep it at some reasonable rate. Yeah, it was the purpose.
I don't know a lot about this, but couldn't we just add delays manually rather than having some calculations enforced to the users? Some constant delay that is enforced. That will just do the job. I mean,
yeah, it's not obvious, and how to be fair. One thing about Bitcoin, okay, I haven't explained what the purpose of blockchain is. The purpose of blockchain is to be able to run such a system with absolutely no authority, no trusted authority. Okay, so we don't have any trusted third parties who maintain time or to add delays. These are just selfish users who don't trust each other. There is no trusted software, there is no trusted authorities, and still people are able to advance the system in a consistent fashion. Even if they are selfish and they would cheat if they have the opportunities, still the system is advanced in a consistent way. Yeah, I think your idea would require a trusted authority, if I understand it right.
yes, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So now some more details then. I think it will also make things more clear for such things. Okay. There are so many details, but I need to skip one. So I think yeah. Özden Hocam, how much time do we have? 50 minutes or so?
Yeah, in total we have 50 minutes.
Okay, so I have about 15 or so more minutes.
Could you, Hocam, maybe explain permissioned networks? Do we need trusted parties in permissioned networks?
It wouldn't be a blockchain. Yeah, they stretch this idea of a blockchain, and there are different alternatives to proof of work, and I can come to that. Mm-hmm. Some of them are called proof of authority, as if it is not a blockchain. I mean, if you have a trusted third party, it is not a blockchain. Permissioned networks are hybrid systems, let's say. Again, they are blockchain, but they are not open to everybody. Let's say banks in Turkey would like to run a blockchain among themselves, 50 or so banks. It would still be a blockchain because they don't trust each other and they don't have an authority like the central bank or someone else. Still, it would be a blockchain, but it would be permissioned in the sense that it's not open to outsiders. It's only by invitation, I think. But there are different alternatives to proof of work as consensus mechanisms, like proof of stake and other alternatives that are more environment friendly and try to create the same impact as this proof of work idea in a more efficient manner. And maybe we can talk about them if we have time. Yeah, some numbers, but we don't have much time. Okay, this is a remarkable picture. Just one thing to note, the y-axis is in logarithmic scale. It is not linear scale. So the progress you see here is absolutely, well, exponential or more than exponential. You see, Bitcoin starts as a toy money, then they start using it for ransomware, maybe. Ransomware is, malicious software that enters your disk and encrypts it, and then they ask for ransom. It was used for, and in computer games, some people start accepting Bitcoin as payment. So it starts to take off around 2010. And then the rest is history, I think. Oh, then why do these guys do mining? I mean, are they so benevolent? Or it doesn't make sense, right? Because we said they are selfish and they would cheat at the first opportunity, but they are putting so much of their own resources into mining to progress the Bitcoin network. So why do they do it? because there is a reward. And one crucial point I haven't explained is how new Bitcoins enter the system, if we can talk about a Bitcoin. Because I mean, I said Bitcoin is just the balances, positive balances in people's account sheets. But we haven't said when these things were initialized. I mean, how did we initialize the system? How were these Bitcoins created? They weren't. I mean, the system was not initialized with Bitcoins in the system. The system was initialized with no Bitcoins in the system. The thing is, as new blocks are added to the ledger, the miner who solved the puzzle first is given a prize for that. And the prize used to be 50 Bitcoins. This third item. It was, so every 10 minutes, 50 new Bitcoins would enter the system in the wallet of the miner who solved the puzzle in every block. So the reason Bitcoin mining is resembled gold mining, because there is only so much gold you can mine in the world. I mean, on Earth there is only so much gold minerals, and also there's a certain speed you can mine those gold minerals. I mean, you cannot do it faster than that. So this is the idea. And also it gets harder. I mean, gold mining used to be easier, but as we need to go deeper, it becomes harder, and we obtain less gold for the amount of work we put into it. So this is the resemblance. Every 4 years or so, this is known as the Coinbase. I mean, the award given to the successful miner is known as the Coinbase. It was initialized with 50 Bitcoins, and it is halved every 4 years. So it has been halved 3 times, I think. Yeah, it's been halved 3 times. When I prepared this slide, it was 12.5, but now it is half of this, actually, the half of this. So as you can see, there is a geometric series in this. If you add these things up, they don't go to infinity. It converges to a certain value, and it is about 21 million Bitcoins. And most of it has been already created and added into the system. And at some point in the future, like if we still use Bitcoin at that time, 2140, year 2140, Bitcoin mining will end, and because there's a certain precision you can use in this arithmetic, and once the half value falls below that minimum amount of precision you can support, it will be 0. So it's just like gold mining, just like there is a natural amount of gold minerals in Earth, just like that, there is a natural amount of Bitcoins that can be added to the system. So this is the idea. Novel idea, but wastes a lot of resources. And there's this issue of tie breaking, and because there is no authority, let's say by a millisecond, let's say somebody in Turkey and somebody in Japan and somebody in the US, they came up with solutions to their puzzles. So who decides who wins? Nobody decides. The idea is people start working on let's say there are 3 simultaneous copies or almost simultaneous copies competing for being added to the ledger, and whoever receives whichever copy first, they add it to their own ledger and they start working on it. So within a few blocks, one of them will dominate. This is the idea. Even if there's a slight difference in timing, that one will dominate, or one of them will dominate. We don't care. Maybe somebody's internet connection is faster. I mean, Japan's internet connection is faster than Turkey, so their solution spreads faster. We don't really care. I mean, whichever one dominates, it will be the next version of the ledger. But of course, we don't know which one will dominate. So it takes 6 additional blocks until some new ledger is considered definitive. Yeah, there's a consent. There's an idea of waiting 6 additional blocks until some transaction is accepted. So about 1 hour. It's not instant transactions. I mean, you cannot pay for your coffee using the basic Bitcoin network. Tie breaking. We talked about mining, I think. Yeah, research problems, scalability is an issue, privacy. But I would like to spend some time on the general blockchain issues. So far, we talked only about Bitcoin, and then there is this question of general blockchain usability. So let me skip forward a little. If you want, we can always come back to this. These are research problems, how to make Bitcoin or blockchain more scalable and more private in the sense that everything is transparent in Bitcoin. So how can we increase, although you don't use your real identities, still it can be traced back to your IP address, for instance. So in that sense, it's not really private. And there are newer versions of blockchain systems that are more private than Bitcoin. Alternative consensus methods, proof of work is just the basic one, and the proof of stake is another famous consensus method, and so on. Okay, now let's come to blockchain. It's been hyped a lot about the potentials of blockchain has been hyped a lot. Some people compare it to World Wide Web, and World Wide Web was the greatest innovation of the 1990s. And it changed the world for good. I mean, we don't do anything like we used to before the introduction of World Wide Web. I mean, we do banking online, commerce online, and many of e-devlet uygulamalar and many other things online. So the World Wide Web really changed the world, and it's a major invention or innovation. So some people say the blockchain is the most exciting invention in technology work, or is it? I mean, they claim so, but it's less obvious because it's been around for so long, and Bitcoin is probably a major innovation, or crypto money, we should say, cryptocurrency. But other than that, it's not clear how big an innovation blockchain is. So it's a blockchain. We already talked about this. It's a public ledger, and blockchain is maybe misleading because people think about something like a linked list, maybe, or something else. It's slightly misleading. So some people like to refer to it as the distributed public ledger. It's a more blockchain is just one of the ways of achieving a distributed public ledger, and the real idea here is having a distributed public ledger that can be run without any authority. This is the idea. This is what we call a blockchain. Okay, this is the innovative idea. Because in the past, we used to rely on trusted third parties to maintain the consistency of such systems. Now we can do without them. This is the idea. So here's a great idea, really. And people start thinking about other problems besides crypto money that could benefit from this great innovation, running a public ledger without an authority. And they speculated, these are the promises of blockchain. Distributed public ledger, it cannot be tampered with. You can do all of these things without any authority. So say people speculated about other potential applications of blockchains. Financial transactions, an obvious one. Instead of just using Bitcoin as a payment tool, you can do maybe other kinds of financial transactions over blockchain. Supply chain management, this is industrial engineering. We talk about supply chain all the time, right? For vegetables and fruits, there's a supply chain. It is produced in the fields, and then people, toptancılar, they buy it and they bring it. So there's a supply chain. Maybe it can be safer if we use blockchain, perhaps, they speculate. Healthcare management. Yeah, in Turkey we have Minister of Health that there is the e-nabız system, ama maybe in an environment where there is no such central authority, perhaps blockchain can be the solution. And diploma validation and other things, and voting security perhaps. The people speculated that even nuclear weapons, people speculate that nuclear weapons can be made more secure. It's hard to imagine how that can be done, because it needs an absolute authority, obviously. But yeah, as I said, it was mostly speculation. There was a hype. If some company announced that they would do a project on blockchain, let's say Walmart or somebody else, that they would do something on blockchain, their stock prices used to jump quite a bit upon such announcements. So it was very much hyped in the 2017 and such, in those years. And when there is such a hype, it creates its own ecosystem, because there are investors, there are companies working on products, there are academicians publishing papers, there are conference organizers, they are organizing events for this ecosystem. So it kind of creates its own ecosystem. It's been going on for more than 10 years now. Events on the great potentials of the blockchain, but still it's yet to be seen. I mean, nobody have, other than cryptocurrencies, nobody has been able to come up with a killer application of blockchain. If you compare this to World Wide Web was immediately a success. I mean, it started in 1993, other than CERN. In CERN, it was 92 maybe. But in 94, we had Amazon. And Amazon started changing things immediately, or maybe 95. So there are more skeptics, I mean, and their voices are growing stronger. The skeptical voices are growing stronger. They are basically saying what I just said. I mean, World Wide Web took off immediately, but blockchain has been around for more than 10 years now, and we still don't see that killer application people have been speculating about. And if you look at this more critically, I have examples after examples, but we don't have time for most of them. I think I can summarize most of it in this slide. Many real-life problems don't need to be decentralized. I mean, in fact, they can be done much easier and more securely if you have a trusted authority. Let's say you have something like e-nabız, and there's a central server. This can be run by government or maybe hospitals. If they can come together to create a blockchain, they can come together to create a non-profit organization that would maintain the servers for this system. It can be done either way, and you don't need a blockchain. If there is a central authority running the system and correcting errors and doing other things, becomes much easier. So there's no such need in many cases. Or for diploma queries, for instance. If you have something like YÖK sorgu sistemi, you can do it better than a blockchain. And if universities want to come together, they are welcome. They can do it without a blockchain. So again, it's not clear. And if you have a blockchain, it is very much open to fraud. Somebody can do a fraudulent transaction, and there is no way to recover. But if you have a central authority, you may have ways to recover fraudulent transactions. So it's not, I mean, it turns out that people are not so interested in completely decentralized systems. And if you have a public infrastructure and digitalized data and data entries are made regularly, you can realize most of the promises of blockchain anyway. I mean, you don't need to make it decentralized. If all the hospitals are integrated and they have a compatible system, you don't need a blockchain. Most of the speculation turns about these features, but they are not inherent to blockchain. They are just about digitalization and digital signatures and regular data entry. And these are examples that were hyped very much at the time, but turned out not to be so interesting. And there's this issue of smart contracts. Smart contract is, yeah, well, you won't need government regulation. People can sell and buy things, and they can put these on smart contracts, and smart contracts will be, it's basically, Bitcoin has a very simple programming language, scripting language, I should say. And maybe we can add more capabilities to these scripting languages, and we can use it for extended purposes, not just adding and deleting Bitcoins, but more extended features. So this is the idea of smart contract. But the problem is, if there is a conflict, let's say I buy something on the internet and people put it on the smart contract, it's not clear in case of conflict how these conflicts will be solved, because there's no authority. Let's say somebody sent me something and it's on smart contract, I can cheat, he can cheat, and it's not clear how we can solve it. Yeah, this is the skeptical view, and my balanced view, I should say, and balanced in my opinion, is, yeah, blockchain is not a useless technology, because some people claim it's an absolutely useless technology. I don't think it's a useless technology. It has a potential, and it's a very interesting technology, but only for limited applications, we should admit. Only in applications where people would like to run such system without an authority. So it's not as significant in terms of application as some people would like to believe, or would like to make you believe, who have interests, nested interests in this. Reasonable use cases, yeah. Money transfer, you can do money transfer cheaper than the current alternatives using blockchain. Perhaps environmental protection, where you don't want to necessarily trust governments to collect your environmental data. You can create a system running on blockchain, and you don't need to worry about governments tampering with the results. Of course, you need to convince governments to install such systems, but once it's in place, perhaps blockchain can make sense. Supply chains where international supply chains, you need to keep track of some, critical items against fake items, essentially. Yeah, cryptocurrencies. Yeah, what about cryptocurrencies? Is Bitcoin here to stay? Is it here for good, or is it just a temporary thing? I think it can very well be the next big item, the next major item in the history of money, because money have gone through a history of evolution. It started with barter, takas, and then we had other kinds of payments, precious metals and paper money, and cryptocurrencies may very well be the next item in this list. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Yeah, so obstacles to blockchain adoption. There is no urgent need, unlike World Wide Web. World Wide Web was a solution to many problems at the time. But blockchain, it's an interesting technology, but there are no immediate problems waiting to be solved by blockchain, turns out. And the lack of trust, these systems are supposed to be trusted, but they run on software, and software can be hacked, and once they are hacked, there is no there is no way to recover, and it's a major problem, and people they don't want to put their whole trust into a piece of software where there is no way of recovery. People just don't want this. And there's so much hacking as stakes are increased, the amount of attacks also increased proportionally. And there is no easy way to protect this, because they run on simple, common systems like common computers. Yeah. It's not 100% hype, but it's a very novel invention in my opinion. But it's not as significant in practice as it's hyped. What else can I say? Yeah, maybe we can recall the dot-com bubble of the 1990s. When World Wide Web was first introduced, again, there was a hype. I mean, there are some absurd business models that just had a .com domain name, and they were able to collect large amounts of investment because they just had a .com name in their business model. Many of them went bankrupt, but it was a major revolution, and we still have Amazon.com, Google.com, and other major companies, and they really changed the world for good. Well, maybe history repeats itself. We will see such a major revolution by blockchain. I think the jury is out and it's yet to be seen. And yeah, thank you for your attention. This is all I had to say on blockchain.
Thank you, Hocam, for this great presentation and explaining the context clearly. Let's go back to students and ask if there are any questions.
Yes.
Is there anyone who is mining Bitcoin maybe or investing on Bitcoin?
So I'm the last person to ask those questions. I never bought or sold Bitcoin. It's like sort of gamble.
Yeah, these days it's like that.
When other kind of currencies are valued, let's say Turkish lira or US dollar, they are valued according to some real world data, real world facts.
Yeah.
Turkish economy or the US economy or the future expectations for these countries, or gold, for instance. I mean, again, you can have expectations. For Bitcoin, it's not clear what price of Bitcoin should be. I mean, people can argue it should be valued according to the difficulty of the proof of work puzzle, but it's quite the opposite. I mean, the difficulty of the proof of work puzzle is adjusted according to the value of Bitcoin. As it increases, people increase the amount of resources they devote to this problem. Mm-hmm. So it's not clear. And also there are many alternatives. I mean, for case of precious metals like gold and silver, there are only so many precious metals that don't rust, for instance. But for cryptocurrencies, there's an unlimited amount of potential for the new cryptocurrencies that can be introduced.
Thank you, Hocam. So before adopting a blockchain application or developing a blockchain application, we have to go through a detailed maybe feasibility analysis that it's worth it or not. Because
exactly, I mean, is it done better with an authority or without an authority? I mean, what's the justification to having to do without an authority? This is the and Cihangir has some very nice lectures on the internet on his YouTube channel, and he also explains these in detail. There is a well-known paper, Do You Need a Blockchain? And the flowchart kind of diagram checklist. I mean, do you need this? Then no, you don't. Then next step is, do you need this? So if you give a positive answer to each of them, all of them, then maybe you need a blockchain.
Maybe applications like clinical data trials, clinical trials.
Well, you must be protecting the data against the authority. This is the main thing. If there is a reason to doubt the trustworthiness of the authority, then that makes sense perfectly. Yeah. Or for instance, for voting security, this is a good example because we have elections coming next year. People talk about using blockchain to protect election data. Well, this is absolute nonsense because the protection provided by blockchain is after the data is created and entered into the computer systems. But election fraud happens before data is digitalized and entered into the computer system. And we don't have such problems as, I mean, CHP has its own kind of data and AKP has its own kind of data. Such things don't exist. I mean, people are to do fraud, they do it before the votes are counted and digitalized. So blockchain has, I can't see any relevance of blockchain to election security as we understand it, because fraud happens before it's digital.
Creating the data. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, hocam.
Welcome, hocam. Thanks for the invitation. And hope to meet sometime when I come to METU.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. I'll stop the recording for now.